Good morning. Fresh from an open-air swim in the rain this morning, I welcome you to our Heritage and Nature webinar to help preserve brain health in partnership with the Optimal Aging Programme at the University of Oxford and A.R.T.S for Dementia. The growing understanding we share today is that thanks to social prescribing, GPs referring patients for personal appointments with link workers for much valued non-clinical support, their patients can now be empowered from the onset of symptoms of a potential dementia to preserve their brain health. Engaging in re-energizing well-being activity in nature and in our historic and natural environment, they and their partners protect themselves from loneliness in the fear-filled months leading to diagnosis of our most feared condition. There are over 200,000 cases of dementia in Britain, some 10 million new cases worldwide. Social prescribing can help them preserve their identity, sense of belonging, of normalcy, of joy in nature for years longer. We warmly thank our chair, Dr. Desi Gradinarova, Senior Policy Advisor, Wellbeing and Inclusion Strategy at Historic England. Desi is also the Historic Environment Lead for the National Academy for Social Prescribing. Warm thanks too to our distinguished speakers for the knowledge you are about to share with our guests from all over the UK, from Australia, China, Italy, Nigeria, Slovakia, Taiwan, and California, Florida, Minnesota, New York, and North Carolina in the United States, and even more have just signed up this morning. Each speaker today is going to talk on their specialism for 5 minutes and share further guidance and ideas in an informal speaker debate chaired by Desi. We shall hear insight into the variety of green opportunities through which people experiencing mild cognitive impairment can preserve their brain health in enjoyable and refreshing ways, and the pathway to and from these opportunities via the Culture, Health and Wellbeing Alliance. Debra Munt, a board director, will discuss the infrastructure around social prescribing at the Culture, Health and Wellbeing Alliance and raise awareness to the social prescribing network. Julie Mccarthy presents the Greater Manchester Creative Health Model of Social Prescribing. Eleanor Tutton, Healthy and Activity Lifestyle Activator, Place Services for Dorset Council, speaks for local authority social prescribing and has a special interest in Nordic Wellness Walking. As both Eleanor and Dr. Lucy Loveday, GP, Associate Dean of Health Education England, Ambassador for Swimming and all-round nature guru, had prior engagements, they have kindly made valuable recordings. In person, Katrina Gargett presents Archaeology on Prescription, where participants have the thrill of unearthing objects not seen for centuries. Julie Harmon, project coordinator, will describe the range of green prescribing offered by Dorset's area of outstanding natural beauty. Stepping into nature, nature buddies. Caroline Gibson, speaking from Australia, will describe Western Victoria's Green Scripts programme. And Alistair Tuckey, Ranger, Head of Volunteers, Education and Interpretation, will present Durlston Country Park and National Nature Reserve's green prescribing opportunities, spectacular outdoor learning on the Jurassic Coast, a World Heritage Site to which Durlston is a key gateway, with coastal scenery of headlands, bays, cedar fenceworks, a rich geological record. I'll never forget how absorbed a participant friend with early symptoms was, she's now died sadly, by Durlston as we searched for wild orchids and watched seabirds flying to nest below us. Their men's shed too is extremely popular. Before handing over to Desi, it is a great honour to introduce you to Sir Muir Gray, highly experienced in public health, co-author of the invaluable guide Increase Your Brain Ability and Reduce Your Risk of Alzheimer's, and director of the Optimal Aging Programme at the University of Oxford, and more. Muir, thank you.
Firstly, the evidence base is very strong, and probably the single best place to look is the Oxford textbook of Nature and Public Health. I'm not involved in writing or editing it, so I can recommend it to you as an independent person. But it's full of excellent research showing how green activity is even better than activity in your own room or in a hall or a gym. And it seems to have an important effect on inflammation. And we now know that inflammation is an important factor in increasing the risk and the progress of dementia. The other issue, of course, is that we think of activity as having three dimensions: physical, cognitive, and emotional. And all three are covered by activity that's in a natural environment. There are two particular groups that we need to think about. Firstly, people in what are called care homes. And secondly, and even more challenging, people isolated in their own homes. Now, the two ways in which I think we can enhance the green experience. The first is the use of digital. And I think we need more cameras in birds' nests, rabbit holes, fox dens, or just watching ferns grow. So digital. And there is an issue of digital exclusion, but most Age UKs are working on that. Second, the last thing I want to say is we need to look for ways in which older people can be allowed and enabled to contribute. And what we are saying to our various groups who are becoming more active, well, why don't you adopt the local wildlife trust? And if you're doing a walking program in a care home, why don't you raise money for the local wildlife trust? It improves the greenery of the county and improves job prospects for young people. But we can think of bringing greenery home, near home, and, for example, letting some gardens go wild in blocks of flats. So that's the points I'd make. Think about people who are isolated, think about people in care homes and blocks of flats, and we think about the use of digital and about a sense of mission. Can we enable older people and people with dementia of all levels to be involved in sponsored walking to improve the green environment in which they and their families live? So I look forward to hearing from the speakers.
Thank you very much, Moore. May we introduce our chair, Dr. Desi Gradinarova, Senior Policy Advisor, Wellbeing and Inclusion Strategy, Historic England and Historic Environmental Lead for National Academy for Social Prescribing. Desi, thank you.
Thank you, Veronica, and thank you for inviting me to chair the webinar today. And it's a real pleasure to be with all of you. So I have spoken on more than one occasion about the well-being benefits of engaging with heritage and the historic environment, especially their very pronounced power for supporting mental and brain health. There is growing evidence that more frequent cultural engagement is linked to better memory and ability to perform cognitive tasks, while heritage and creative activities have a role to play in increasing creativity and stimulating brain health and imagination. But I'm especially delighted that we are looking today at both nature and heritage. I honestly believe that the best way to approach connecting people to our environment is to see it as one holistic thing made of nature, people, culture, history, and climate. The everyday person doesn't see things in sectors, and we have to try and see it from people's perspective and offer as wide and rich understanding of the environment and its opportunities to individuals and communities as possible. So from a heritage perspective, there is so much that our sector can offer to help improve mental health and well-being. I'm sure that we all have enjoyed a stroll around a historic market town, explored a historic house, attended exhibitions in museums and galleries, or a service in a historic place of worship. But heritage is not just old buildings. It includes historic landscapes, historic parks and gardens, archaeological sites, and historic coastlines. And something people rarely consider, the intangible heritage, which is made of people's shared memories, past experiences, and their personal stories. This intangible heritage often means more to both communities and individuals than a park or a listed building itself. Connecting with all of these aspects of our heritage and nature around us can contribute immensely to our feelings of belonging, identity, and purpose, and helps people come together and be proud of the places they live in, and as a result, increase community cohesion and improve our well-being. Now, this slide here is looking in more detail in the practical ways to use heritage for personal well-being improvement, as summarized in our assessment on well-being and the historic environment published in 2018, and how to utilize things like volunteering and visiting historic sites, sharing stories and experiences as a therapeutic approach, including specifically for boosting brain health through the power of reminiscing, connecting with the past, and exploring places of meaning and memories together. We talk about 6 routes into this agenda, and the last one is exactly about environment and how heritage can help us experience our environment even better and deeper. Not only heritage sites and places often give us the opportunity to be outside and connect with nature or be physically active, but they also provide that additional cultural layer to that experience, helping us to feel part of something bigger, something meaningful and important, increasing our feelings of identity and belonging, and stimulating our imagination, promoting learning and instilling that sense of discovery. Often they also offer solace and escape, transferring us safely into another world of pastimes and wonder, exploring the connections of our own past and stories and those of the people next to us. Heritage helps us understand ourselves and how we as human beings relate to each other and how we fit into this world. Now, we at Historic England realize that there is so much more that we can do to promote well-being through our work and to address health inequalities through heritage. To this aim, we're launching later this month our new Wellbeing and Heritage strategy, which will ensure that well-being is embedded in our work as heritage professionals and is a key objective of all Historic England projects. We're looking at 4 key priority areas as a start. These are young people, older people, mental health and loneliness, all of them relevant to issues connected with brain health and mental well-being. We are aware that these are not mutually exclusive groups, and neither do they cover every element of health and well-being, but we believe that this focus will help us to develop knowledge with partners to understand specific needs of particular communities. One of the most promising delivery mechanisms of embedding well-being and addressing health inequalities is social prescribing, an approach that the health system is massively investing in, and which many other sectors such as nature, arts, sports are very actively engaging with. We believe that there is a great opportunity for the heritage sector to get involved in this space as well, and to maximize our public value and our contribution to improved public and individual health. Historic England has partnered up with the National Academy for Social Prescribing, and we're working with many colleagues across sectors to promote social prescribing, help create these links and partnerships, and support the development of innovative social prescribing approaches. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm appealing for a holistic approach to the environment. Heritage is part of the natural environment, and our relationship with nature is part of our heritage. So I will stop here now, and I will let my wonderful colleagues take the virtual stage and share with you their knowledge and experience of utilizing the power of heritage and nature for improving our brain health and mental well-being. It is time now to hear from Dr. Lucy Loveday from Health Education England.
Hello, and thank you so much for the invitation to speak. This is a very brief overview of the highlights, some of the highlights of the existing and emerging evidence that supports the potential role of nature to benefit our well-being, preserve brain health, and enhance our sense of well-being for mental health. So some of the highlights are to do with trees and what the Japanese traditionally will call Shinrin-yoku, which literally translates as forest bathing. And this is led by some of the key researchers in Japan, Dr. Quinn Lee and Professor Yoshifumi Miyazaki. What they are able to demonstrate through the studies that they have conducted with the team are that trees and plants produce these volatile organic compounds called phytoncides, and phytoncides can have a mediating role to benefit our immune system function. And trees, being in the presence of forests and trees, not only benefits and impacts on our psychological sense of well-being, but also at a physiological level, reducing our stress hormone blood pressure, and increasing our heart rate variability, which is all supportive of lower stress state. Fractals, for those of you that don't know, fractals were first coined, or the phrase was first coined by Polish mathematician Mandelbrot in 1975. And fractals really describe the pattern that repeats on a progressively finer scale to produce objects of enormous visual complexity and beauty. And fractal patterns are abundant in nature. In the pine cone here that I've included, in peacock feathers, seashells, and so many more areas and places in nature where you can find fractal patterns. And whilst the studies are very small and in the early stages, Professor Richard Taylor and his team are demonstrating that looking at images of fractal patterns with a mid-range D value assigned can have a favourable effect on our neurophysiology. So I encourage you to read the article that I wrote, which looks at this or summarises this in a little bit more detail, and I'll circulate that to Veronica for accompanying this talk. And of course, exercise. We know that exercise is good for us, but if you exercise outdoors as you are able and safe to do so, then you have the additional benefit of the vitamin D boost. I recently wrote a systematic review of some of the literature, as much as I could find, around the types of movement, physical activity and exercise that support strength and balance as we age. So again, I will circulate that reference to Veronica and the team. And of course, one way we can combine nature with movement is to garden. And gardening lends itself as a really natural facilitator to meeting physical activity requirements and recommendations. And a national survey in England fairly recently, not surprisingly, showed spending time in the garden, if you are lucky enough to have one, will positively be associated with a sense of enhanced well-being and overall health. Now, we live in busy, hyper-connected lives, and our central executive function, which is responsible for keeping our attention focused on the task in hand and directing our attention appropriately, that mechanism, that neural pathway can become very, very fatigued. And Kaplan and Kaplan have recognized some features that are in natural environments. I've listed the 4 there. Particularly interesting is the feature of fascination. And those features, again, have real potential to restore the mental fatigue and stress that we can experience. And particularly the soft fascination, which can evoke this sense of restoration, and it can manifest itself in many ways. So be it through the observation and enjoyment of watching a butterfly's wings, and there's a silver studded blue that we saw fairly recently, or whether it's enjoying the visual magnificence of a display of a starling murmuration. And I'm going to move through at pace just to get across some of the incredible ways that being in nature can really help our mental fatigue and reduce our stress levels. And it's not only the visual sensory input from nature that can support us, it's also the auditory. Birdsong, we just celebrated the International Dawn Chorus, and there's always a tweet of the day on Radio 4 to enjoy, but really Dr. Eleanor Ratcliffe is doing some fantastic research into the role of birdsong to support our stress and preserve our sense of restoration. And there is a pied flycatcher seen recently, and a link that will be included to the fantastic Sensing Nature project that really looks at bringing nature to people who are sight impaired and may therefore find it challenging in different ways to access these opportunities in the environment. And I have to say particular thanks to Graham Taplin for the audio soundscape that he shares in that link. There was a recent review, I will not have time to go into it here, but by Bratman and colleagues, again, the references included, that really nature experience does benefit our mental health. And so I encourage you to embrace the natural environment, almost like a symphony for the senses, in whatever way you can, and in however way you find brings you that joy and restorative effect. I am one of the first ever outdoor swim ambassadors for Swim England, and so I just felt my duty to direct you to some interesting emerging research around cold water proteins, studying the swimmers at the Parliament Lido. And Professor Giovanna Malucci at the UK Dementia Research Institute Centre at the University of Cambridge is leading on that research, and I really encourage you to find out more after this talk if you're not already aware. Ultimately, it's about connection. We live in this hyper-connected world, which I've already spoken of, but we have this sinister, rather paradoxical challenge playing out, and that is one of loneliness. The loneliness epidemic is so real, and it's affecting so many people, particularly people who are older and potentially at risk of being more socially isolated. And what I find through some of the research I've done listening to voices, particularly of excluded communities, is that nature can offer people places and spaces that often people can't. Nature can be non-threatening, nature can be safe, people can feel held by nature and feel this sense of belonging and this opportunity to reconnect with a part of yourself that perhaps you've lost or forgotten. This was at a beach in Pembrokeshire last summer, and I think it speaks more than 1,000 words, this beautiful display of the pebbles creating a ring of connection. We are nature, Andy Goldsworthy says. If we talk about losing connection with nature, then we're losing connection with ourselves. We're not inseparable, and certainly the survival of our species depends upon the natural world. So I encourage you to embrace the awe, the beauty, and the huge transformative potential that lies within the natural environment for your health and well-being. And please stay connected. My website is www.movementandthemind.co.uk, and there's various resources, and I'll send on the papers that I've referenced as well. Take care, and I hope you have a really enjoyable learning opportunity and experience. Thank you.
Many thanks to Dr. Lucy Loveday. That was a brilliant presentation, and I think we're moving now swiftly to our next speaker, who is Debra Month from the Culture, Health and Wellbeing Alliance.
Yes, thank you very much, Desi and Veronica, for inviting me to speak today. So I'm actually a board member for the Culture, Health and Wellbeing Alliance. I suspect many of you may already know about the Alliance, but for those of you that don't, it is a membership organisation of around 6,000 members now of people who have a vision for culture and creativity as part of the world of health creation. It's a small support organisation, really, with a national remit, and we try and reach into the regions. And the small team are doing a really good job of developing support materials around all things culture and health, and included within that is social prescribing. And that is to support grassroots and frontline activity, the kind of which you'll be hearing about today. I should say my stuff is rather dull in comparison. I'm sorry about that. But it also tries to amplify the voice of the sector, the people doing that work, because you will hear about a great variety of work today, but it often happens out of passion, bloody-mindedness of the people who are involved in it, it often is not strategically supported or developed, and that is one of the missions of the Culture, Health and Wellbeing Alliance. So today I'm not really talking about frontline delivery of any kind, but rather about infrastructure or lack of it to support that work. There is social prescribing material. There's a whole page dedicated to social prescribing for anybody who would like to find out more about that. In terms of the Culture, Health and Wellbeing Alliance, there are things like you know, museums on prescriptions, toolkits, or a social prescribing myth-busting tool by London Arts and Health. And if you are a member of TWA, and actually even if you're not, and you have an inquiry about anything within its remit, you can actually contact the team and they will do their very best to be able to help you with that inquiry within the kind of limitations of being a small national support organisation. I think they average about 2 inquiries in England every day. So please do feel free to contact either the national team or the Alliance has a network of regional champions in every area. There is an arts champion and a museums and heritage champion. So if TWA need help with an inquiry that you might make, they will also reach out into the kind of local knowledge, more local knowledge through the regions. And whilst what can't happen through those regions, because those regional champions are voluntary roles, we can't provide you necessarily with a really beautiful, simple, clear pathway from a social prescribing client through their link workers, through TWA, right through to the individual artists, museum practitioners or nature practitioners, because that is a very big and complicated job. And so, unfortunately, we're not able to do that. But what we might be able to do, if you have a request, say, for example, you would like a particular gathering in a particular area to look at how you might organise around social prescribing, or you might want to have debates and conversations about it, then the Culture, Health and Wellbeing Alliance may well be able to support you in convening that activity. It also partners with the London Arts and Health on their Creativity and Wellbeing Week, which is actually coming up 16th to the 20th of May. And on Thursday the 19th, there is a day specifically on social prescribing, which I would recommend you join. And on the morning of Friday the 20th, myself and my link worker colleagues in Derbyshire will be launching the link worker manifesto that we have been working on as a result of an artist-led support programme during the COVID lockdowns. So the work that I'm doing in Derbyshire is a really good example of there isn't enough infrastructure to be able to support this work. It's very complicated. Every primary care network gets to do social prescribing in its own way. And then in every area, there are different flavours, different organisations, different assets, different passions, different people on the ground. And that makes for a very complicated blend of a landscape to navigate. And we have very little in the way of infrastructure that might broker and help people navigate that whole world. So outside of my work with TWA, I'm a sort of freelance developer within culture and health. And in Derbyshire, we are now looking at how do we create a kind of soft social infrastructure around this. And we are looking at supporting link workers to develop very simple, a network of simple social groups right across the county. And the idea of this is that eventually they become a kind of peer support network for social prescribing clients and for link workers themselves. And then in parallel with that, we are also looking at developing a role around a cultural programmer who would work with the culture sector to work up the offers that are available, to tweak the universal offers, but also to look at where there are gaps in provision and commission new pieces of work. the programmer would then be able to link directly with that network of link worker social groups across the county, so that there would be a really direct exchange of information. The programmer would be able to connect the various organizations that are in an area to those directly to those social prescribing clients via those groups. And this is the kind of infrastructure at the moment that we think is missing. So hopefully I will be able to report back at some point about much clearer, more tangible and transparent pathways to help this process on its way. And then this will be exactly the kind of thing that the Culture, Health and Wellbeing Alliance would then be able to amplify, share, in the hopes that we can share that learning more broadly across the country and across the world. So thank you for the invite. Take care.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you very much. I will add to what you said at the end, but thank you very much for raising all these issues. And now we're just going to go to Katrina Gargett from the York Archaeological Trust, who will talk about the fascinating project, Archaeology on Prescription.
Good morning, everybody. It's so wonderful to be here today to tell you about our new project, Archaeology on Prescription. Like Desi said, my name is Katrina and I'm the Community Engagement Manager for York Archaeological Trust. And for those of you who don't know who we are, we're an educational charity in York that operates 4 attractions across the city centre, including the world famous York Viking Centre, and we also have an active commercial fieldwork unit as well. But I'm here today to tell you about the work that we've been doing in the community engagement team. So over the last year, we've been developing Archaeology on Prescription, which is our new social prescribing project, aiming to engage the residents of York in archaeology to improve well-being, to foster new social connections, and improve self-esteem and confidence through the development of new skills and knowledge about archaeology and the past. The project really came about because we began having conversations before the COVID-19 pandemic about the potential for archaeology to improve well-being for those within York who are struggling with their mental health, who might be lonely or isolated, have one or more long-term conditions or complex social needs. As Desi highlighted in her presentation, it's long been acknowledged within the sector that involvement in heritage can have a positive impact on an individual's mood. And archaeology, as something which has traditionally been very off limits as an activity for those who aren't working in it, has all the right ingredients to really benefit those who do and can engage with it. Archaeology is very tactile, it's physical, it gets people outside, and we've heard about the benefits of being out in nature. It's exciting, we can all really resonate with that wonder of discovery. But most importantly, archaeology is a social activity. It's fundamentally about human experience. It's something that can connect us all with each other and with the people of the past, and can really contribute to a sense of place and belonging. And it can really unite people in a shared pursuit of discovery, and everybody kind of working together to meet the same aim, which is to discover more about the past. So in that sense, it's very suitable as a social prescribing activity, which can have a profoundly positive impact on someone's personal and collective well-being. Our project is intergenerational. We engage a range of ages, from older people who've retired to working age adults and young people and students who are facing mental health difficulties and loneliness. So it's quite an ambitious project. It's not like one we've ever done before. So we took our kind of first tentative steps into social prescribing by doing a pilot project. So we secured a number of small pots of funding from local funders, which we used to deliver a 9-week pilot from September to November last year, excavating in the site of the garden of a disused care home that's owned by the City of York Council, which is adjacent to the medieval city walls in a historic area called Warmgate. So because this was our first foray into social prescribing, we decided to pilot the project with 2 non-statutory charitable organisations who we've worked with on previous community engagement projects, who already work with those who we hoped might benefit from taking part in the project. And those are Converge, who are a charity based at York St John University, who offer creative courses for students with mental health needs, and Changing Lives, who work with people recovering from addiction. So working with these two charities in the first instance has enabled us to have the support of professionals and support workers in mental health for our delivery team, as well as providing us with training in mental health awareness, because we acknowledge that we are archaeologists, we are not mental health professionals. So the pilot itself was a brilliant experience. We had around 30 participants in total referred from our two project partners, and they were able to take part in a range of archaeological and artistic activities as part of a flexible model of delivery that we developed, where people could choose what they wanted to get involved in on the day based on their individual needs and interests. Nearly all of our participants took part in troweling, even where disability or access issues made that a challenge. But they also had the opportunity to do fines processing, fines, bagging and identification, recording and researching the rich history of the Walmgate area. And alongside that, they had opportunity to lead the way in co-creating artistic pieces. So we had one participant who created a collage of the site, they did field sketches, and even created a film about the story of the excavation, which was really lovely. And they found lots of things, as we are very lucky in York. You stick a trowel in the ground, you're going to find something, because we have 2,000 years of occupation. So they found lots of things, from pottery to animal bone, and I can never not mention our star find from day one, which was a Terry's chocolate orange wrapper from 1989, that long ago year. That really kind of did just contribute to that sense of place, with Terry's obviously being based in York. So the impact of the first pilot was, we were quite kind of taken aback by just how much of an impact it did have. We of course commissioned it to be evaluated by the Converge Evaluation and Research team, who were based at Converge, and they are a research team made up of people with lived experience. And the results really indicated that the project had a hugely positive impact on the mental health of those who took part. They felt welcomed, supported and confident to engage in archaeology by the staff team. They felt part of a team, they made new friends, they enjoyed the range of activities on offer and really appreciated having that agency to choose what they wanted to do, and that they learned a great deal about archaeology, the past, York, and about each other. And this supported the anecdotal evidence that we had from some of the participants, who by the end of the project really opened up in very profound ways. So just the first 9 weeks alone has proven to us that archaeology really can have a profound impact on a person's well-being and sense of self-worth. And we're currently in the middle of delivering a second 9-week pilot, where we're working with more local non-statutory partners, including SASH, who are a youth homelessness charity, Blueberry Academy and Door 84, who work with young people facing social and mental health challenges. And we have our first referees through our local social prescribing link workers, many of those who are older people who have been suffering from loneliness. So I could tell you so much more about the project, how we've developed it, how we developed our referral process, and kind of the challenges that we faced and are facing as we continue to develop the project. But I fear I'm running out of time, so I will just say that this is only the beginning for Archaeology on Prescription. Our bigger aim is that we make this into a sustained year-round programme where people can be referred either through non-statutory partners or through social prescribing link workers. And not only that, but we want to establish it as a model that we can take to other archaeological sites in York and further afield to cities like Nottingham and Sheffield, where we have our other offices. Of course, as Deborah's highlighted, there are challenges around that, as the social prescribing landscape looks different in each region across the UK, and I'd be happy to talk about that in the debate a bit later on. But above all, we are really hopeful that by fully establishing and expanding our offer, we can make a significant, positive and profound difference to as many people's lives as possible by engaging them with archaeology. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina. It was brilliant to hear about this very innovative work that you're leading on. Without wasting the time for our next speaker, we'll go to Julie Harmon from the Nature Buddhist program.
So I'm Jules Harmon. I work for the Dorset Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty, and I deliver on the Stepping Into Nature programme, which has been running since 2016. And it looks at working with a consortium of different partners to make green spaces and green space activities and nature-based activities more inclusive, particularly for people living with long-term health condition or cognitive impairment or in a carer's role. So the main aim of Stepping Into Nature and the Nature Buddies Network is that we feel that connecting to nature should be accessible for everybody. And it's not just about getting out into nature, it's actually taking part in a meaningful activity once you're out there. And that could be doing poetry outside, or doing art outside, or going on a history walk. It's a very different thing. And what we found through the program that we've been delivering is that actually there was a gap in people being able to get out on their own, that maybe weren't feeling so confident, or didn't have anybody to go with, and they didn't feel like that they could actually engage on their own. So we linked in with Arts Development Company, and we put in the Thriving Communities bid and won, and the Nature Buddy Network was part of that delivery. So the idea would be that we would set up a volunteer Nature Buddy initiative to support those finding it difficult to get out. We wanted to embed it within organisations as an option for people to sign up. So it wasn't as having the a pool of volunteers. It was actually people that dealt with either the volunteers, or they actually had contacts with clients and recipients who needed this extra support. And the reason why was it is because we wanted people to be able to get out into nature and get into green spaces locally to them and become more confident, and hopefully then reducing the impact of social isolation and increasing their physical and mental well-being. And this was like a one-to-one, so it was a one-to-one volunteering. So we would link a Nature Buddy volunteer with a recipient who actually wanted to be able to get out, and that needed to be driven by what those people wanted. So it could have been a walk down to the park, or simply sitting out in the garden feeding the birds. It was very much wanted to be driven by what people were requiring. So this is kind of a rough role of actually how it was, how it would have worked, or how it does work. So it's a circular moment. So the people who are recipients link in with organising groups who have contact with the people in need of support, and the volunteers, and so forth and so around. So we could have organisations involved in it that coordinated volunteers, but also organisations that had contact with people in need. And it was about connecting that loop together. So the Nature Buddy role, it has some sort of a certain amount of autonomy, where the Nature Buddy finds what suits the person that they are linked in with best, and then helps them support them on that journey of living happier and healthier. So it's very much looking at people-centred, and it's very much linking into what people were requiring. So where are we today? The pilot of this started back in, well, over a year ago now. So it was due to finish in March, but because of certain elements, it got extended over to June. So we only have one organisation signed up, Age UK, but they've been piloting the initiative and want to continue piloting it over the next year. We've got 12 people signed up for the regular activities, and feedback has been, the effect that it's had on people has been profound. You know, there's some really strong stories about how people now are being able to get out, and the changes that's made into their daily habits. But we have a few barriers that we have to address, and we're coming across. Capacity from the organisations that are linked in has been tight, and they've had to, especially after COVID and having to catch up with everything. Our capacity to deliver it, because this is an add-on project to an already heavy workload, and limited resources. We didn't have a lot of funding in the first place to be able to deliver this. So it was trying to work out what it was we actually needed to potentially, you know, get it off the floor and get it wider. And getting organisations to have a bit of understanding of how they can embed it within what they're already doing, because they're already tight with resources, they're already lacking in capacity. So it was a difficult sell to try and sell it to them to get them involved. But it was met with loads of enthusiasm, and people wanted to become involved, thought it was a really good idea. And the engagement around that has been really, you know, beneficial that's coming out of it. So we haven't got the final report of the effects that that's had, but we'll be having that in the next month or so. But we're struggling to get it mainstream. And I suppose for me, having all these people and these experts together in the room to listen to me, it's how do we take it wider? So any advice around, well, it's a good idea, should I ditch it, should I carry on, would be good. And that is it. That's my contact details. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, have a chin wag and a chat over where the problems lie, I'm happy to chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Jules. That was brilliant. Thank you so much. We're going now all the way to Australia, so to speak, and we'll hear from Caroline Gibson about the Green Scripts program.
So, no, thank you for having me from Australia. So This first slide is just a breakup of what our poster looks like. And basically it's about green scripts being in nature is good for you. And we focused on staying active for longer, reducing isolation, decreasing stress and anxiety, and enhancing memory and thinking. And our project, first of all, I should acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land where I work, live and raise my family, the Wadawurrung and Dja Dja Wurrung people, and I recognise their continuing connection to the land and waterways. Just to give you an idea where I am, I'm in Australia, Victoria, and about where the sea is in Victoria is where this project is run in Australia, and it's the first such project in Australia using the bush. So green scripts, we've all talked about it. We know that social prescribing is a good, positive thing for people's health outcomes. The Royal Australian College of General Practitioners here in Australia, it's been reported that 70% of GPs believe referring patients to community activities and the like will improve health outcomes. But the barrier is most of them do not have links to such services. They don't know they exist. I heard you talking about link workers before. We've got community connectors in some areas doing some hard work, but our project is a community-driven project. It sort of comes from the grassroots up. We have a park in where we live in Ballarat, in the Canadian State Forest, called Wurrugurrung Park. It's really lovely. It actually means, in Aboriginal, it means a place of plenty. And it certainly has been, as I'll show you, a place of plenty. A dementia-friendly forest and sensory trail walk was developed there. It was started by the Bigger Hearts Dementia Alliance, a volunteer group in Ballarat, which was developed out of a Compassionate Cities project, which then becomes Compassionate Ballarat, and they called themselves Bigger Hearts. It was a dementia community alliance, and the people that started it, Anne Tudor and Edie Mayhew. Edie had dementia, and Anne was her partner and carer. And they were determined, I think I heard the word bloody-mindedness, they certainly were, that they were going to make a mark on our community and it was going to become dementia inclusive. They lobbied with Parks Victoria. There was this space in the forest that was being developed. And then what happened was this wonderful trail, which I'll show you some pictures of. The fact, I think, that it was community driven and community supported is what really has made this a success. On the left-hand side, that was all the seedlings that were going to go into this area. They were all grown up with Parks Victoria and one of the Melbourne Uni rural sites. COVID hit, the schools were supposed to all take the trays and nurture them. But because of COVID, we all in the community, there was a big call out and hundreds of people in the community all took a tray of seedlings home and looked after them for 6 months until they were ready to be planted. At the time of planting, we were able to involve the school children and also local community members from far and wide all came to help us. And we had an awful lot of support from a lot of local businesses, state, local government. This is Bank of Melbourne staff, executives that came down, also helped with planting and also with some of the other infrastructure we needed. So it's just a few photos to start. So Green Scripts is what the project's called, and Green Scripts is actually the tool. It's the online resource, was called Green Scripts, and that just illustrates the different health benefits of being in nature. We built this online tool, it's a free resource, basically so primary care practitioners would have some of the language or some of the, or just something to show people other than the flyer that people can just access on their phone. It's just, you know, like an app. That looks at what the physical, mental health and social care needs of people living with dementia and their support persons accessing this space. So Green Scripts is the tool, but in a way the script is the walk, is the space, the space in nature. Both projects, the Green Scripts and the walk, did receive dementia-friendly community grants to help support their development. We deliberately used the word dementia, partly because it came from Anne and Edie's determination to use this word, not to shy away from it. And a part of it then is by using the word, we're looking at normalising, reducing stigma and supporting acceptance of people living with dementia. and to a certain extent support acceptance of that journey towards a diagnosis. But the trail's for everyone who wants to engage with nature. It's been built as a space to move, sit, touch, look, smell, listen, be alone, be with others and reflect. And a lot of people, I noticed I was writing down words: fascination, exploration, embrace, connection, belonging, heritage, culture, symphonies for the senses. All of this, I believe, is built into this area. So the green scripts itself, the resource, has 4 sections: walk, move, connect and think. Now, if I can be clever, does that change my screen? Can people see that? Did it automatically link?
No, it's fine. Yes, we can see it.
It says connect.
Yep.
So this is what a page looks like on our on the web, on the app. So it says connect, social benefits of being in nature, create a sense of belonging, an opportunity for positive social encounters, decreases isolation, opportunity to share skills and knowledge. And then at the bottom, it just gives a few clues of what you could do. You could walk, you could pack a family picnic, share a cup of tea, play a game, talk with friends or share a story. So that's just, how do I get back to, that's not working. Hang on, I'm not very good at this part. Oh, there we go. So it should now be back on the green scripts talk site. This is what the park is, the park map that's gone up, just to show, I'll just throw that one in. But here's some elements of the park, okay? So this is what's called bush window. And on that, Edie's got the thing, that's actually like a picture frame that you can put yourself into nature. And so it says the trees want to know how you are. So that section's bush window. Just if you sit behind bush window and look up, some of the local artists, I don't know if you can see there, there's a possum in the tree there. And they've been built, they're little concrete sculptures that some of the local artists built and donated. And we've got a couple of wombats, a couple of kookaburras, wallabies. There's a few other things too, located around the trail for people to discover. There are some real ones as well, but these ones are much more reliable if you want to find one. We've got a section in the walk called Lizard Lounge. There are a couple of concrete sort of lying back chairs. And on the right, there's the photo that is what you see when you look up through the trees at Lizard Lounge. Stone Circle is a big space with the rocks around in a circle. That's been used for some Indigenous storytelling, Tai Chi from our local community centre, yoga, and also that picture there is of a 4-year-old's birthday party. We also, Wren's Rest, even though that is not a wren, it is an eastern yellow robin, I believe. The Wren's Rest area on the walk is been located, it's got some seating, and it's where you can most likely hear the wrens, so where it was placed. And there are a lot of bird watching groups that supported us in this placement because I'll tell you in a sec how they come up. We've got wildflower walks along this area, and there are volunteers that will take people along and show them the wildflowers. We've got a part that's called Magic in the Forest. One of our local artists has gone around and picked bits up from the forest and then reconfigured them into these little bits of furniture and that. And they're down in the bases of trees or little nooks and crannies. And, you know, if that's something you want to do, you can go and find them. And they eventually wash away. It's sort of, they're these transient bits of magic. But just sort of as a summary, it's an accessible, inclusive space for everyone, even though it's called the Dementia Friendly Walk. I think I love that idea of the nature buddies. We do, through the Bigger Hearts Alliance, have people that if there's someone who's a little bit nervous about going out into the forest or, you know, just not too sure, they can contact us and someone will come out and meet them there. We have 400 people accessing the trail weekly, which is quite phenomenal, we think. The people accessing the trail are people living with dementia and their carers, but also we have a lot of younger people, disability groups. We have people out of residential aged care facilities because they've now got a destination they can go to. This section of the trail has been built in such a way that 2 wheelchairs fit side by side. And also it's got a flat ground, it's an easier walk. The walk does end up coming into what's called the 10,000 step walk that's currently being developed. So you can start off on this nice walk, the sensory trail, and then it gets progressively harder as you get up to the lookout and then come back around the other side of the forest. So the green scripts part of the tool, which is what the title is today, is actually about linking, you know, describing it to general practitioners and to primary care. It has been challenging, that linking, partly because of COVID. We weren't allowed to put flyers or posters into waiting rooms. They all came out. We weren't really able to access primary care very well. I am a community nurse and I had struggled too because we just had so many people. Well, we just weren't allowed in with COVID. We have got the Dementia Pathways project happening at the moment through nationally, but also in Victoria, from what I call the inkling, which I talked to with Veronica. So that time when people start to think, hold on, something's not quite right, but I can't put my finger on it, right through to post-diagnostic management. And I'm on an advisory group for this, so I'm going to work at linking in green scripts and social prescribing into this tool, which will then be sitting on the GPs and practice nurses' computer. So when they're working, they'll be able to link in and print something off about it. So green scripts is the tool, but it's the trail is key. And I think the success to it was that it was due to the compassion, generosity and inclusiveness of our community. So many people came together. As I said, we had Parks Victoria, whose land it is, or really it's our local Indigenous community whose land it is, who are also heavily involved. But Parks Victoria own the land. Federation Uni, they helped me build the tool. I just did the content. We've had Fed Uni students put little, I forgot what they're called, so it shows my age. Those little scanning barcodey things on different parts, so you can actually hear different parts of the journey, like what's the bird calls are and what they are and things like that. We've had schools involved in planting and maintenance, local business such as Bank of Melbourne, state, local government have provided bits of funding, local artists have built us things, and just general community. We've had so many people experience the walk who have had dementia that have felt included in the space and constantly going back. But we've also had so many people go without cognitive impairment and dementia and not feeling them excluded either. So it's been a wonderful experience to be part of. And they're the website, so you can look up the Bigger Hearts Ballarat Dementia Alliance, or that is the Green Scripts tool. So thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. That was absolutely fascinating. Such a brilliant range of activities and spaces you've created. I can see from the chat that the other attendees were also quite impressed. I'm sure there'll be quite a lot of interest to your websites afterwards.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you so much. And we're going now to our next speaker, Alistair Tuckey from the Dalston County Park.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Ali. I have the privilege of working at this fantastic site, Dalston Country Park. It's a national nature reserve. It's one of the best places in the UK for wildlife and also an amazing place for people. We get about 250,000 people coming here each year. And I mean, as you can see from the picture here, it's got it's a great place to unwind, to de-stress and draw strength from the natural world and the amazing heritage of the site. So as Veronica very kindly said right at the start, it's an incredible place for wildlife, over 4,000 different species of living thing, from birds to butterflies to bees, some amazing views, wonderful landscape to immerse yourself in, and that sort of good complexity that we were talking about earlier on. But I'm not going to talk about that community of species here, but more about the community of people that we have here at Dalston, and really in particular about the power of volunteering for people's health and their well-being. So really strong community of volunteers here, about 17,000 hours a year of volunteer time. And that's people from all sorts of different age groups, different backgrounds, doing all sorts of different work. And I think, as some of the other speakers have said, volunteering is an extremely powerful way to draw strength through difficult times in your life. And we wanted to make our volunteering here as inclusive as we possibly could. So making sure that people with disabilities, with long-term health conditions, could all access volunteering, because I think it's one of the worst things about having a disability or a health condition is how disempowering it is. So really volunteering not only gives you that social element, helps you learn skills, but it's also about giving the power back to people at a time in their lives when they may not have much ability to make change in the world. So what I particularly wanted to focus on today was not the way volunteers are involved in the practical work, in the visitor services, in the education, but particularly through a new project here, which we've called Everyone Needs a Shed, because everyone does, and here's our lovely shed. And really the point of the project was to offer new ways for people to volunteer, which were very informal, very sociable, which weren't too physically demanding, and also very much about volunteers working with other volunteers, trying to get away from that sort of gift relationship you sometimes see in health and social care work, so that it really is peer-to-peer support. So the shed is open for people of any different age. Our youngest volunteer who goes to the shed at the moment is 14. Our oldest just very proudly celebrated his 98th birthday, and they do all sorts of different work. So the shed, to start with, it was very much a blank canvas. It's been co-created with the growing number of people who use it. So doing all sorts of different work, whether that's gardening, we've talked a little bit about already, and gardening with a purpose as well. So selling those plants to raise money for the park and support the park and the project, growing plants to be used in our landscape restoration scheme, which we're running here as well. And it's just such a great way, oh, there's Gerald, such a great way to bring people together, to take that gentle exercise, to learn skills, to share skills as well with each other. So people of many different ages, many different backgrounds, trying out things like green woodworking here, getting to use axes and pole lathes for the first time, making bird boxes to be used around the park. And as I say, just making those amazing connections between people. One of the nicest things, I think, about the shed is the huge range of people of different age groups who come. This was a lovely project we did with our local memory cafe for people with dementia, where the volunteers from the memory cafe were working with kids who attend the nature nursery here. So running activities for them, and that's a great two-way relationship. The kids absolutely loved the company of the people from the memory cafe. They really enjoyed helping those kids experience nature, be creative together. And that was a really successful thing, which is continuing to grow. I love this photo. To me, this just really sums up the atmosphere. I could hear this argument over a game of ping pong going on long before I actually saw it. And as I say, I think the shed's developed a really strong community in a very short time. We've just been running it for 3 years. They now run 5 sessions a week, from Cuppa and a Chat, which is aimed at people perhaps who are socially isolated, at a new gardening session, practical sessions. And as I say, those people are supporting each other in amazing ways. During the first lockdown, we said perhaps we ought to get together a Zoom so all the sheddies can keep in touch with each other. And I suggested it to one of the sheddies. They said, oh, we've been doing that for weeks. We saw one of our volunteers, Brian, who's blind. He lost his guide dog during lockdown, but one of the other volunteers from the shed immediately stepped in to help him get out and about, access the park, access nature again. So it really is that magic that always happens when you put people and nature and green spaces together, and good things happen, not just for people, but for nature as well. So really, I could talk for hours about Durlston, about the park yoga, the park runs, the mindfulness walks and forest bathing we're doing. But really, as I say, I think it's that magic of getting people into nature, and good things happen for both. So I'm going to stop sharing there and hand back to our MC. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alistair. Wonderful work you're doing over there. Thank you very much for sharing. I think next we're going to hear from Elena Tutton from the Dorset Council on the fascinating wellness Nordic Walking.
Hello, my name is Elena and I am the Health and Activity Lifestyle Activator for Dorset Council. My role is split between the Active for Health Exercise Referral Programme, the Outdoor Activity Programme and day-to-day running of our Golf and Activity Centre. I'm here today to talk about my links to social prescribing, our exercise referral programme and our outdoor activities. I'm sorry I couldn't join you live today, but I hope this short video is useful. In my role, I receive referrals for patients who may benefit from exercise for a range of reasons from a variety of health professionals such as GPs, physiotherapists and social prescribers. We receive referrals for a wide range of conditions, including people with long-term health conditions, people looking to lose some weight, mental health conditions, or patients who may not currently have any health problems but are at risk of developing certain conditions in the future. We also receive patients with neurological conditions such as Parkinson's, MS, or dementia. Every patient is different, and when I contact patients after they have been referred, I have to assess their risk level and categorise them either as low, moderate, or high risk, and then place them on an appropriate pathway for their needs. For example, a patient who's at the onset of dementia would typically come through as a low to moderate risk patient, dependent on any other conditions they may have and their overall health. A patient further along in the disease progression would likely come through as a high-risk patient and would need to bring a carer with them to these sessions. Typically, a moderate or high-risk patient would need to be referred to a leisure centre and, depending on the severity of their conditions, may need to see an instructor who is specialised in their condition. Lower-risk patients can be referred onto any of our outdoor or community-based activities such as health walks, cycling or Nordic walking. Our Nordic wellness walks are suitable for people with a lower level of fitness, a health condition, or those who are just getting back into exercise. The wellness walks take place in the forest and around the lovely lakes at Moores Valley Country Park and incorporate mobility exercises to help with flexibility, balance and strength, as well as general fitness. Nordic walking has many benefits, including improving cardiovascular fitness, maintaining strength and flexibility, and range of motion around the joints, maintaining bone density to reduce the risk of developing osteoporosis, improving memory and reducing cognitive decline. Regular exercise such as a Nordic walk also reduces the risk of developing various comorbidities such as hypertension, heart disease, type 2 diabetes and cancer, to name just a few. Another benefit of Nordic walking is the reduced strain through the hips, knees and ankles compared to a regular walk, as the poles allow for the effort to be redistributed with greater use of the arms, so these sessions are great for people who've had injuries or those with problems in their lower limbs. Many of our regular walkers tend to be older, and so the walks have been very beneficial for them to help maintain their mobility and reduce their risk of developing health conditions as they age. The aim of our exercise referral programme has been to connect people in Dorset who may benefit from regular exercise with an activity that they enjoy and is appropriate for their health needs. Nordic walking is one of the many activities we offer to help people get more active in their local area, and we have recently been able to expand our programme to offer more regular Nordic walking sessions across the county, and we've recently brought our very popular Nordic workout walks to Blandford, Ferndown, Bridport and Wimborne, with hopes to offer walks at even more locations over the next few years. If you have any questions about our exercise referral programme, please email activeforhealth@dorsetcouncil.gov.uk for any questions specifically about the referral programme. For questions about our Nordic walking, please contact healthandactivity@dorsetcouncil.gov.uk. Or for questions about Nordic walking in general, please visit either the Nordic Walking UK or British Nordic Walking websites. Thank you.
That was Helena Tutton, and now I think it's time for our last speaker today, Julie Mccarthy from the Greater Manchester Combined Authority and the Health and Social Care Partnership there.
I'll give you a whistle-stop tour of beyond social prescribing in Greater Manchester, and linking in with the Green Agenda and with brain health. So this is a real, like a dip into about 50 different things. So why social prescribing? So in Greater Manchester, we have very much a strategic focus on inequity and addressing the wider determinants of health, and that's across the life course. So the kind of facts and research that we focus on are that we know that 20%, between 10 and 20% of GP appointments are non-medically related, but around loneliness, depression, housing, etc. So this is where social prescribing really comes into its own. We also know that demographically, older people are more likely to access social prescribing, although that demographic, that age group is lowering. And we also know that at the moment, it's in Greater Manchester, it's about 2 to 1 female to male take up. So your biggest cohort for social prescribing is older women, and it's actually older white women as well at the moment. So, and we know that why social prescribing? It gives people time and focus on what matters to the person, through a shared decision making and personalised care, an asset-based approach. And it's that time that a GP or nurse doesn't have to give to someone, but it's often the reason this relationship can unpick the reasons why someone has approached a GP, because they don't know who else to talk to. But we know that this is a really important relationship, because there's clinical evidence that isolation and loneliness alone can shorten someone's lifespan in the same amount as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So it has we're not only talking about mental health, we're talking about physical health, and we're talking about people dying earlier because they feel isolated. So in Greater Manchester, we work in partnership with the VCSE sector and private and public sectors. The role of the sort of social prescribing infrastructure is to identify needs and gaps within the community and to develop the local offer. And until April, so until very recently, National Health England funded regional associates to support systems and link workers. But from now on, that relationship, that responsibility sits with regional personalised care teams. So in Greater Manchester, we're quite lucky that because we've carried on that support for those teams. So social prescribing is embedded within our health and social care partnership, and we work closely with the training hub and programme boards in Greater Manchester. So that's mental health, for example, suicide prevention, diabetes, brain health, and our pathway for brain health and dementia in Greater Manchester is called Dementia United, I think, to offer additional training to link workers. So we're able to work as well with the steering group to identify support and training needs. So it's a really integrated approach. But other support and training is available through NHS, through the National Academy for Social Prescribing, the Personalised Care Institute and Health Education England, which offers training around person-centred approaches and engagement with community. So there's a lot of support out there, but not necessarily focused around brain health and or dementia. In terms of green social prescribing, we are one of 7 national pilot sites funded by Debra, and we're targeting those most disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. So we've got 4 test and learn sites delivering the programme, and these are Sober City in Manchester, so they're focusing on food growing schemes, Lancashire Wildlife Trust, testing types of activity that attract participation from across a broad demographic, Petrus in Rochdale, breaking down barriers to participation. They're specialists in homelessness, so they're looking at diversity access as well, and Salford CVS. So they're looking at the links between green spaces and therapy. And then across Greater Manchester, we have City of Trees, who are creating a resource hub, delivering shared assets and training, etc. And generally, we're trying to establish referral pathways from mental health trusts and other local referral channels. So really trying to unpick how we integrate the support for across the life course, but including brain health. And brain health is an across the life course issue. So as well as that, so my main job at the moment at GMCA and Health and Social Care Partnership, it has 2 parts. So, and they're both really related to this subject. So Live Well. So Live Well is a manifesto commitment. So it's one of those commitments that Andy Burnham was elected on. So it's my responsibility to work out how we deliver against that. And essentially, it's a beyond social prescribing programme. So we are aiming to build on our local social prescribing services to create a minimum offer, which would be a structured, consistent offer of information, advice and support with routes into supported activity, all with the aim of improving personal and community wellbeing resilience and social connection. We're designing it with communities. It will be delivered with communities. It's going to be accessible, easy to access, and support people with what matters to them. So it's an asset-based approach. And one of the central pillars is access to green spaces. So the others are financial inclusion, access to cultural and creative activity, physical activity, housing. So those are our main pillars at the moment. They may change. We're working on that at the moment, and we're working very closely with the voluntary sector and with health and social care colleagues and with public service reform colleagues as well around this. We have a very strong public service reform team in Greater Manchester who basically their raison d'etre, and I sit within that team actually, is addressing the wider determinants of health and social inequality. So as part of that piece of work, moving away slightly from green, but this is linked, I'm also developing the infrastructure and the strategy around a creative health city region. So our aim in Greater Manchester is to become the first creative health city region. And we are in close conversation with National Heritage Lottery Fund about how we link the green agenda with outdoor spaces and with heritage sites. Heritage Lottery Fund have a wellbeing, one of their outcome measures is around wellbeing, and they've done a lot of work around how, and they're doing a lot of work at the moment thinking about how inequality, green spaces, heritage are linked together. So we are creating a strategy. I've got the draft number 4 on my desk, which really links recommendations from the Marmot review. So that's a review into inequalities in England, and the GM Independent Inequalities Report, which was a GM specific report about how we address inequalities and the wider determinants of health. Our new Greater Manchester strategy, and also current research on the role of culture and creativity in addressing the wider determinants of health. So we're trying to link that all together. This will come under the umbrella of Live Well. But as I said before, access to green spaces is a really important part of that, as alongside culture and creativity. I just put up a couple of links here. So when we're talking about how we support the workforce, we're really conscious that a lot of people are not in your formal or your NHSE funded link worker roles, but might be working in a community allotment or might be working with a supper club with older people. So we've created an introduction to social prescribing, which anyone can access. It's on the Personalised Care Institute website. You just have to register and then go to their resource hub. And the aim of that is to really give an introduction to people who work in community settings with people, or the voluntary sector, but also health and social care professionals who might not understand the opportunities that social prescribing brings. So that's one of the ways we're addressing kind of access into this world. We've also got a Live Well Make Heart network, so we're just relaunching that at the moment. So that's why there's not a link, because we haven't got one yet. And that is to support practitioners, both in health and in creative practitioners, in their work around social prescribing and also broader creative health approaches. And then also I've worked really closely with Greater Manchester Ageing Hub, and there's a link to their part of the GMCA website, who are about to launch a pilot in 10 areas across Greater Manchester, looking at what healthy neighbourhoods look like, and green is a major part of that approach, particularly as a greener city region is one of our 3 major aims for Greater Manchester over the next 5 years.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you. No, it's been brilliant. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to see, the wide variety of work you've done in Greater Manchester Authority and your partnership there. This is exactly what, we're trying to encourage more partners across the sectors, and including local authorities and, health sector, to explore. And I'm sure that it will be a great example for people to see. So But I just want to say that it's been fantastic to see the range of practices, the range of projects and activities and research that's been going on in so many different areas of heritage, nature, and social prescribing. For our sector, specifically in the heritage sector, a lot of the challenges that we have in embedding well-being and also in implementing social prescribing as a delivery mechanism of delivering well-being is the awareness amidst people about the potential of heritage and historic environment to actually raise your well-being. We need more evidence and more research specifically to show that positive effect, and it's increasing. There's more and more, obviously, that is happening. But in an attempt to bring a variety of colleagues and sectors together, Historic England is not only partnering with organizations like the National Academy of Social Prescribing, but with other colleagues across our sector. And we formed recently a Heritage Social Prescribing Community of Practice, where we're trying to see what's happening in our sector and to support each one of us in the different organizations, nationals and local, to kind of grow their knowledge and their understanding, to kind of help us all bring guidance, evidence, and toolkits that we can share then widely within the sector and with others. But I know that the nature and the natural environment sector are even further ahead of us. And even today, they have the Green Social Prescribing event, which is running in parallel, which I'll be also interested to see later today. And they already have plenty of evidence that shows what those benefits are. And in terms of social prescribing, I know there are a lot of challenges for implementing these projects in practice. There are a lot of funding and infrastructure, obviously, challenges at the moment, but partially this is because it's such a new mechanism. It is not new in theory, but in the practice, in the scale and level to which we're trying to implement it across a variety of sectors, it is massive. It has great potential because, as many people said, we are focusing on the person-centered approach. We're focusing on people's needs, and for that reason, I think it is worth it to put all our efforts strategically and practically in that.
Thank you, Desi. You've been amazing. Is there anything any of our speakers would like to discuss further? Now, it would be lovely to hear you do so, very informally. I mean, one of the things that I think is terribly, myself, really important is we've talked about volunteering, and volunteering for people who's worrying about their brains is such a brilliant idea, because it actually helps preserve their brain health in the best possible way to feel useful, and the intergenerational approach that we've seen in quite a few of the talks. Caroline, you'd like to discuss with British colleagues, or anybody else like to ask her? Or
I'd just like to note, though, the few comments about the diversity, and I think we all know that's obviously a good idea, and I don't know whether it's we start from our comfort zone and work our networks out, that maybe we end up looking like this little white female group almost.
Yes, we are actually going to devote a webinar to that.
But we, in the Green Scripts project, Ballarat is a low socioeconomic regional town, about 100,000 people is our population. And then very quickly we step off the edge into rural. And so we have a rather large Indigenous population. We don't have a lot of other multiculturalism really in Ballarat. We're starting to get one of the refugee centres, largely Tongolese, I think, Tongolese and Somalian. But other than that, we're not like if we're in Metro Melbourne or something like that. But we have had interest and involvement. Being community driven, anyone who's been interested just comes along. And that's what I said, like the magic garden, that someone just came and did that. We just discovered it, you know, that's the beauty of it. And someone's doing an art series of women with dementia or something, and they're doing portraits of people, women with dementia within the forest space. So I think a lot of it's just hopefully will move to become more and more and more and more inclusive as people hear about it. But I think that's a really valid point that was brought up a few times. Yeah. And I can't take credit for our work. I tried to get one of our volunteers to talk about it, but no one was game. It was truly a community.
Terrific.
Maybe just before we go, I'll take one of the comments in the chat, if that's all right, which is a very, very valid point about one of the biggest problems or challenges currently in implementing social prescribing is the funding situation. So a lot of people know that it's usually based on funding a project for a short period of time, and the usual funders, the different lottery funds, Heritage and Community Lottery Funds and others funders are obviously not only developing more capacity and interest specifically in supporting social prescribing, but as Julie said before, having well-being at the core of their main kind of areas which they would like to support. So this all is very positive. However, we are looking now, and when I say we, I mean not only Historic England, but National Academy of Social Prescribing, where we have, of course, a lot of family and bodies and other organizations represented. We're all looking to find sustainable long-term solutions to this. I'm not going to lie, this is not going to happen overnight. This is a kind of a long process where the health sector and the Department of Health obviously leading on by implementing social prescribing as part of their 10-year-old plan, and they're investing via supporting link workers to be part of primary care networks. But we do understand that it is the third sector, and it is also even the private sector who have to be all kind of encouraged and supported to feed into developing social prescribing. And one of the ways we're trying to explore as a solution is to create regional shared funds in which different bodies, different funders, different even businesses that want to support these schemes can put in, and they can become part of sustainable programs that the local authorities can support. In that way, what Julie Mccarthy just said in their plan and their vision is something that we want to encourage further. You know, this is a first step, but that's how we learn about it and how we try to promote partnerships, not only across sectors, but on different levels as well. And they have to be focused on local needs. They have to be focused on collaboration and working across different sectors, and they have to be, of course, developed in a way that will be different in different areas. So there isn't one size fits all. And what I'm saying is, we do understand that there is a lot of work to happen, but the good thing is that there is will and there is interest on a very wide kind of spectrum of players in that field. So I will take at least some encouragement from that.
Oh, thank you, Desi. And also to say that NASP, in our report, Arts for Brain Health, as you know, I massively highlighted the Thriving Communities Fund partnership structure, which Jules is part of. I think that is completely ideal, and mortified that it stopped. But as you know, NASP is holding a funding event shortly, and which I hope, and you know much more than I do.
And it is not stopped in that sense. It is changing, and what I just said, a kind of encouraging the creation of regional based, not national necessarily, but regional, shared funds, shared community funds is the way we're going forward. So it may not be called Thriving Communities Fund Round 2, maybe called something else, but that's the way we're going, because Thriving Communities Fund was brilliant and demonstrated how social prescribing as a model could work and should work. But we do understand that we can't let the third sector and everybody else just work from funding a 12-month project to funding another 12-month project. This is good, but we have to move at something more sustainable, and that's where we're going next.
I think the key is to involve the university students. So if you have, you know, this wonderful, as you know, social prescribing student champion scheme, and we had in Southwark, we had an art student, a medical student, interacting with the participants, and I think that this in a way there's win-win, because it both helps their career, social prescribing, and
yes, that's part of it, definitely. Our students and our clinical social prescribing champions are one way to help us promote this and get the partnership between sectors. But social prescribing will become more of a, if you want, whole community approach. I heard quite a good few examples today from other organizations that are already implementing this in one way or another. What I mean is, in support of the link workers employed by primary care networks, we're having more and more examples of peer-to-peer supporting and volunteering networks.
Yes, the speakers, for example, Ali, how is the Dalston, or your fantastically huge program, funded? And it's a whole social prescribing program, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we have the advantage of being part of a site. So as long as I can make sure that the site keeps washing its face financially, that gives us the opportunity to support volunteers. So really, I guess with the shed, you know, it was initially funded through a National Lottery Heritage Fund project, which established the facilities, and then through the staff already based at the park, we're then able to support volunteers to do that important work. So I think, you know, it's an absolutely key point, isn't it, that volunteers need a degree of support from paid staff. I think that's really vital for them to be able to work effectively. But then I think, you know, you can then get to that point where 95% of the running of the shed is now done by volunteers, which I think not only gives us the resource to be able to do it, but it's also really key to the ethos of that sense of ownership and that atmosphere of the shed, that it's, as I say, it's not a carer-caree relationship, it's a bunch of people all working together. Brilliant.
And in Australia, Caroline, how is yours funded? Is it funded by the health teams?
Our funding, it's sort of a mixture of funding and goodwill and donations. So Parks Victoria, it's their land, it's part of the state park. They've put in quite a bit of funding. It's taken years of generally gathering bits of buckets of money as we go. Dementia Australia, we got 2 buckets of 2 grants from them as part of the dementia friendly communities. A lot of businesses donated materials. For example, the Lizards Lounge, we had some local business donate that and make that. Local artists donated, you know, the sculptures we've got in the trees. School groups did a lot of the planting. So it really is a community funded thing out of goodwill of buckets of money. But Parks Victoria have oversight of the area.
Wonderful. And Katrina, I see you switched on. How is our archaeology on prescription funded?
So like I said in my presentation, the first pilot that we ran was funded by smaller local charitable trusts, and a few of them that kind of we put together to form a pot. And then we developed a winter program over the kind of winter months when we couldn't be on site, that was post-excavation artistic activity, and we were lucky to secure a small amount of funding from our local CCG. So we accessed NHS funding for that. But just before December, we were awarded a community renewal grant fund from the government. So that's enabled us to develop the project, but that ends at the end of June. So we're currently in the process of seeking further funding. We're putting in for a National Lottery Heritage Grant, which hopefully if we get, will keep us going for another 3 years. But it's that classic thing that Desi's saying, like many projects like ours, where we are seeking funding sort of on a monthly and yearly basis. So, you know, if we really can secure local funding, regional funding, as Desi was explaining, that will be really beneficial for us.
So Heritage Fund social prescribing projects. Yes. They are social prescribing Heritage Fund. That is a really useful. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Desi. It's just having these people, these wonderful things.
That's very important
to hear how this, you know, because it's so difficult. You're so right, because arts or projects, project funding is what the NHS is so just can't bear, because, you know, the participant will just have taken the the plunge, taken ages to take the plunge to join a project, only to find that it's stopped. But the wonderful thing about what we've heard so much about today is that it's going, it keeps on going, and it's just absolutely thrilling to hear you speak, and wonderful to hear you, Desi, when you're at the forefront of the decision making. Can
I just say something, Veronica, about, because we're funded by the National Lottery, but all of our projects, we've been funded by the National Lottery, we've had funding from the Arts Council, and we've had funding from Thriving Communities. But for us, it's a different approach in the fact that we're trying to embed the inclusiveness within things that are already running. And so when we walk away from it, they've been embedded within that, or they're elements that people can self-manage. So we kind of like, I agree with you, Desi. I hate it when you have a project, it's great, it's delivering, and it stops. So I've always been like, how can we, if we don't get funding, how can we sustain it in other ways that enables people to make their own decisions to go and actually be able to get involved? So if we fund a walk, for instance, it'll be a walk that's been in a nature-based organisation that maybe don't engage with that audience. So we'll go in and we'll help them set it up, we'll help them deliver it, and then it becomes part of their normal delivery. So that's
no, you're absolutely right, Jules. And actually, we're also looking at creating something similar to what you're doing. You know, you talked about nature bodies, and we're looking at creating something similar called Heritage Connectors. And we're actually developing it, learning from Natural England in your practice, in your experience. And I know that there are other colleagues in other sectors, in arts and sport and whatever, they're doing something similar as well. And that's exactly because what I mentioned when I said whole community approach to social prescribing is exactly that. To use existing schemes, existing volunteering and other community support mechanisms which can implement social prescribing. So it's just part of what people do. And that's one way to support that sustainability. And I know another attendee, another of our colleagues today that joined the webinar said about exploring how the health sector and the NHS can look at supporting activities, financing activities. And that's, of course, another thing we're looking to do. And NHS improvement are also interested in taking part in those shared regional funds that we're trying to create with the Community Lottery Fund and other helpers and you know, supporters. But at the moment, the main focus that the health sector are putting their money into is obviously in supporting link workers. So, you know, we're trying to attack it from different angles. But at the end of the day, I think, Jules, you're absolutely right. We should be using what is already there and enhancing it, just making it work better for the future.
Yeah, if you want a test site, we've got plenty of heritage down here in Dorset.
Oh, brilliant! Well, we're always open for propositions like that.
Yeah, and we've actually just got a little bit of funding from the NHS to deliver nature-based wellbeing activities for their staff as a pilot. So, and again, it's because we're working with a large consortium of different partners. We don't actually deliver anything. We, you know, empower others to deliver.
Yeah, but that's the secret. It's exactly that. Just engaging partners across sectors and people who can help you with, you know, whatever area they're developing their expertise in. So yeah, that's brilliant. Cool.
Thank you all so much.